Welcome to Proven Framework for Successful Collaboration. And tonight we have two hosts for you. Let's start with Lauren. Lauren Nossett is a professor turned novelist and the award-winning author of the thrillers The Resemblance and The Professor. Described as elegant and thoughtful by the New York Times and, quote, impossible to put down, unquote, by Paste magazine, The Resemblance won the ITW Thriller Award for Best First Novel. Her next novel, Indie Darling, will be released this July. Lauren also is the founder of the Substack Thriller Thursday. You can subscribe for thriller recommendations, author interviews, and craft essays. And Ria Frey is the #1 best-selling author of a dozen books, and she's done a bunch of other symposiums for us, which are fantastic. As a book doula, she has helped nearly 1,000 first-time authors land agents and publishing deals, a Silver Faucian finalist, Book Pipeline's film adaptation winner, Target's Book of the Year finalist, and voted one of Marie Claire's best fiction writers. Ria's work has been optioned for film, featured on Good Morning America, CBS Saturday mornings, and in the New York Times. And you can learn more by going to riafrey.com, which we will put all of the links to their fabulousness in the recording email. So I am going to leave you in fantastic hands.
Okay, we're going to try to make this super fun for you. And again, questions at the end. We'll leave plenty of time so you can ask us anything. So here's Lauren and I sitting at a table together discussing our proven framework for successful collaboration. So Lauren and I are actually collaborating on two separate projects. So we are working on something with 4 writers total, which is super exciting. And then she and I are also working on our own separate project. And we're just really going to talk about what brought us to collaboration because, that's not something that's for everyone or everyone thinks about, but now having done it and been in it, I think it is so much fun and it's almost like just easier in so many different ways, but really setting yourself up for success is important. So that is what we are going to go over today.
Yeah, and for me, this is such an incredible partnership. I am your typical extrovert, and writers fall in both camps, but a lot of times writers will say that they're introverts, which works well because what do you do when you're writing? You're sitting at home alone by yourself, brainstorming, imagining, getting words down on the page, which is incredible and necessary, and that time by yourself is needed. But for me, I would do that and then I'd have to go to a coffee shop just to get human interaction because I'd be so starved for other people. And I always wondered what it would be like to collaborate with someone. My late husband was a musician and he collaborated with people all the time, and you could just feel the energy that came from that. But I had never had the opportunity to do that with my first 2 books. I sat on panels like this one in person at Thriller Fest with other writers talking about how they collaborated and thought, oh, one day I'd love to do that. In part because of the extrovert tendencies, but also because when I was writing and ideating all by myself for 300 pages, I wasn't getting any feedback at the point of when I had the first idea, if it was a good idea, if it could be improved. And as I moved through the process, I also wasn't getting any feedback. And often by the time I would finish a book, at least the first draft or probably the 10th by the time it made it to my agent and editor, they would have a lot of opinions about how the book had gone that I kept thinking, well, this would have been really helpful before I spent a year drafting this and now I have to tear it all apart. If through the process I'd had someone to brainstorm with. So here comes Ria with this amazing idea first to collaborate on what would be a 4-person project. So with 2 other writers that we're doing as an audio first. And from there, it's grown into these other book projects between just the 2 of us. And it has been just an amazing, transformative experience to brainstorm together from the very beginning, but then have each other's feedback, almost instant feedback through the whole process. So that's what we'll be talking about with you today.
And I want to just piggyback off of that because before we even started collaborating, and this is a fun way to kind of dip your toe in, is Lauren and I exchanged our solo books that we were working on, and we edited each other's books. Like we just gave each other feedback. As a book coach, I do that for writers anyway. So I'm collaborating all day, every day. But I did not realize what a phenomenal editor Lauren is, which is also a really important skill set that we'll talk about. But we realized like we kind of think the same and we have very similar thought processes. So that was almost a way to vet each other before we even got into it. So maybe you're at that place where you're like, okay, well, it might be kind of cool to collaborate, whether you are, a screenwriter. We did not preface this by saying this is absolutely for screenwriters. What we're talking about tonight, we've geared this a little bit more toward books because that's what we're writing, but definitely still works the same. But I think some really important questions come up. I know they did for me. I'm a total type A personality. So, some questions that people have, like, will I lose creative control? When you're working with other people, you don't always have the final say. So if that is super important to you, are you willing to bend it all? What if your styles clash? Picking a partner, maybe you pick a partner that's wildly different from you. In this audiobook that we're doing, the four of us write in four different genres and our styles are wildly different. And that is actually an asset for the book that we're writing. But for you, that might not be the best thing ever. So really thinking about that, like, ooh, what if our styles do clash? Is that a deal breaker for you? This is a big one. Like, what if one of you writes faster than the other and one is really slow and methodical and the other person can just kind of churn it out? That's something to really think about. And then really just where do you start? So maybe you do want to write, maybe you have someone in mind, but how do you start? If you have something to write down with, just jot down anything, like any questions, any fears that might come up or something that has maybe hindered you from taking this collaborative step. So just kind of have that nearby and we can definitely talk about it at the end.
Yeah, and so one thing we'll be talking about is the framework. So, how do you harness your combined powers, as they were, your combined skill sets to create something really unique and even better because you're using two minds instead of just one? So, we'll talk today about how to do that step by step.
Definitely. And I love this little like line here that the collaboration is about harnessing your individual strengths and bringing them together into a cohesive project. Sometimes I think we feel like we have to meld into one, seamless voice. And, for the projects we're working on, we are doing different points of view. So it's very easy to kind of fit into our different styles. So what we're going to cover is, I think we pretty much cover everything and all the major concerns in collaboration. So finding your creative partner, we're going to talk about how to do that. How do you brainstorm together? People have such busy schedules. They have different processes with how they think about things. Expectations. So I know it's so fun to just like dive into something and think it's going to work well, but the more organized you can be going in, the expectations that you can set, whether that's signing a collaboration agreement, really putting something on the calendar every week, just being as organized as you can and having parameters around this whole process, I think eases a lot of headaches. Dividing work, it's great to just be like, yeah, we're going to write an 80,000 word book and then not have any sort of division of that work and strategies around that. So we're going to talk about some good strategies there. Navigating disagreements. Lauren and I are super lucky, and with the other writers too, we have not had any disagreements, but that can happen creatively. It can happen personally. What happens if you don't like this partnership and you want to get out of it, or the other person wants to get out of it? So we're going to talk about that too. And then how you take feedback, how you promote the project. So whether you are trying to collaborate with someone, get traditionally published, or you want to put it out yourself and indie publish, there are so many positives and advantages to working together to promote your work and get it out into the world.
Exactly. So the first thing we're going to start about is how do you find that creative partner. So that's the foundation of everything, is that person that you're going to spend, well, we'll talk about your schedule, but you could be spending a good amount of time with this person, exchanging notes, exchanging ideas, brainstorming, and getting feedback, which, as all writers know, can be a very vulnerable position when you're getting feedback on something that you've written and you feel really strongly about. So why the right partner is the foundation, and why taking the time to choose your person who you want to do this is important. We all would love to write with a friend, but not every friend is going to be the right writing partner for you. So what are the kind of qualities that you need and things you need to think about when you're looking for your creative partner? So one is mutual respect. And this, of course, means respect for each other's writing and their process, but it's also respect for their time. Writing takes a lot of time, and it's something that many of us have to fit into our other responsibilities. So as much as we want our own time and our own boundaries to be respected, that's something that we have to be willing to offer the person that we're working with. Compatible work ethic. So not identical, but something that works well together. And I'll say it's interesting because I am learning that my work ethic can change, and my patterns, and namely the speed at which I would normally write, has been very much escalated.
Sorry.
Working with Ria, because Ria is an incredibly fast writer. If I'm working on a book myself, I can spend months working on a chapter, and I can and do spend months working on a chapter, even in the first draft, trying to perfect it. Ria and I, even this week, so for example, Ria had written a chapter on Friday. I was out of town, but I managed to write a chapter on the plane on the way back. And then Ria had already written a chapter, which meant then I had to write another chapter. So we are essentially in this current collaboration project that we're doing, just the two of us, we're writing a chapter every other day, meaning she's writing chapter one day, I'm writing a chapter the next, she's writing a chapter. I would never do that left to my own devices, but it's pretty amazing how motivating it is to know someone's waiting on a chapter. I write so much faster knowing that Ria is waiting on my chapter before she can write mine than when I work on my own project and the only person waiting is me, right? So it's that kind of accountability that for me has been really inspiring and motivating. So that means my work ethic has changed a little bit, but I think it's changed for the better. But we also have honest communication about both, our schedules, what we're capable of. If one of us is sick and can't get to it, if one of us has another commitment and maybe is going to take a little longer, we just let each other know to set expectations so we can budget in this time, because this writing project is only one of each of our numerous projects. It's also willing to say things kindly, and we'll get into this when we get to the feedback portion. But when we are talking about what is working and we're brainstorming and having different ideas, we're sharing those in a kind way that serves the book. But we'll go into more detail to this later. And then similar goals. So you want to make sure that that writing person has the same vision for the project scope, for the audience, what success looks like. Maybe for you, the success is just finishing the book. You've never written a book before. You think it would be really fun to do this with another person. You just want to see if you can. Maybe success for you looks like trying to get this on the bestseller list. That's also great. But if you have two different ideas, if one person's just happy just writing it, another person feels like this needs to be a bestseller, you're going to have some differences along the way. So it's just good to have those conversations up front.
Couldn't agree more. Oop, here. Okay, so kind of have the lay of the land there, and you might already have someone in mind, but what about if you don't and you're like, where do I meet a potential co-writer? It's kind of like dating in a weird way. But I think, everybody probably on this call is part of some sort of community, writing wise, even if it's teeny tiny, or you might know some other local writers. I mean, you're here. I think Book Pipeline is such a wonderful, wonderful resource to get to know other writers. So, looking at the communities you're already involved in, if there are any sort of local writing groups. I remember I met actually one of the women that we are co-writing with. I met her years ago in a writing group that I joined. And I'll be honest, I'm not a big writing group person. I don't love getting too many cooks in the kitchen when you're working on something and get like varying feedback. But it was something, this was back in like 2017, and it was before my first book came out, and I just really wanted that support. And ironically, I could never have known that she would then become a writing partner all these years later. But that was a relationship that we built year after year after year. So looking at the people in writing groups, different sort of workshops. There's tons of local writing workshops, libraries put them on, bookstores, just kind of poking around and seeing where you can get to just know someone. I mean, I think admiring someone's writing is great, but getting to know them as a human, because just like if you land an agent or a publishing house, if you're going the traditional route, you are going to be very in close contact with this person and have an actual working relationship with them. So you want to make sure you actually like the person. I think that's really important too. Conferences, festivals, wonderful place to meet writers. There are so many different events. Look up in your city wherever you are, and also in your genre. If you write in a genre, I mean, or if you're a screenwriter, there's so many wonderful resources and great places to meet writers, and you can just kind of talk about it, talk about collaboration. Online communities, there are so many different ones out there too. I know, in November, so many people do the NaNoWriMo and support each other. See who you're connected to online. You might be shocked at a writer waiting out there who might want to collaborate. And then, like I said, local bookstore events. I have met so many of my closest writer friends through bookstore events. I remember before I became published, I went to Parnassus Books. I did not have a book event or a book deal yet. And I went to an event and saw three of my favorite writers. They weren't collaborating, but they were doing an event together. And I just told myself, like, I am going to be up there one day. And I went and I introduced myself to these writers. They all ended up blurbing my first book thanks to that relationship. So just think about this like as relationship building and who you already know, who you can get to know, because you never know when that person or people could become a co-writer or an advocate of yours in some way.
And I'm a big believer in if you want something, other people do too. So if you
Absolutely.
live in a place that doesn't have an incredible local bookstore and you are aware of what's online, but you're really craving that in-person connection, I guarantee you there is someone in your town who wants that too and is looking for that too. So you can always throw something up on a social media platform or on a neighborhood group saying, "Hey, this is what I'm looking for. Who else wants it?" I did this when I started a book club here in town. I was like, I want to be a part of a book club. I know there must be other people who want that, and it's grown into this huge thing. And I almost feel like it's a service. I mean, it was very self-motivated and selfishly motivated because I wanted it, but then there are so many people that for them it was how they met community, met other, in that case, readers, but there's also some writers in that group. So I think if you build it, they will come, and if you want it, they want it too. So don't be shy and know that you're really doing a service to your community if something like that doesn't exist and you create it. What an incredible gift to your community. So if you are looking for a writing partner and are not finding these things in your communities, then start something and invite other people in on that journey with you, and hopefully you'll find a writing partner. So, oh, and I also wanted to say, because at the beginning of the last slide, Ria said that writing is like dating. Ria and I met because another author who Ria knew and I had met in New York said, "Oh, you live in Nashville, which is where both Ria and I are. Have you met Ria Frey? You have to meet Ria Frey." And she essentially set us up on a
You
pseudo
did.
date where we met at a coffee shop and just
Right.
talking and really hit it off. And that was what, 3 years ago, maybe?
And I think I actually said at that coffee date that I think I brought up collaboration, that I've always wanted to do that with another author. Like we talked very briefly about that, but who would have thought like we'd be collaborating on two projects? Like it's just so cool. Like you never know when that's going to happen.
Yeah, yeah, really amazing. Okay, so before you rush in, just like anything, love collaborative projects, you don't want to rush in, right? You want to make sure you have a strong foundation before you engage with that person and before you commit to this big project together, right? So make sure you connect in around, of course, your project, what you want to do, your writing, but also on a personal level. Right? Make sure, I mean, part of I think why Ria and I can work on these collaboration projects together is because we are also friends. We are friends in addition to fellow writers. And that makes anytime we have to have, not that we've had a lot of hard conversations, but if we did, it's easier because we can come at it knowing that we both support each other in addition to each other's work and our own project. If you want to kind of test how you're going to work together, like Ria mentioned earlier, it's helpful to collaborate small. So a lot of you here are already working on your own projects, thinking about collaborating with someone else. So if you're working on a short story, a blog post, a longer novel, whatever it is, asking that person who you might want to engage in a larger project together to read your work, to offer feedback, volunteer to do the same thing for them, and see how you exchange ideas. See if their feedback feels valuable and if it's enriching, and see how that process is for you too. Do you feel like you can offer constructive feedback in a way that is helpful to you? Do you communicate well? You can test all of these things before you commit to a longer project and bigger project together. And then if you think, yes, this is a great partnership, we are successful, we communicate well, we give each other good feedback, receive feedback well, then make sure you are intentional about how you commit to each other.
Mhm.
Ria, do you want to add something?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, and I know I said it earlier, but like your evaluation of my books, or just like chapter, and the way that you kind of saw things that I wasn't catching, and vice versa. I was like, oh my God, I want to work with this person because the way that she even is evaluating my work, she is able to see things that I don't. And we just complement each other that way. And I don't know if we would have known that if we had just jumped into writing without actually kind of editing and exchanging our work first. It was a really cool kind of like check. Oh, yep, check, check, check. Like she just kind of checked all the boxes, and it made it a no-brainer when we decided to collaborate.
Yeah, and here's the thing, when you are writing a book, especially if you're writing it alone, which I think a lot of us can have experienced, that book exists in our head. We know it forwards and backwards. We know all the characters, all the backstory, all of those things, but they're not always making everything that exists in our head doesn't always make it onto the page. And so it's incredible to have an early reader, especially one who you do communicate well with, who is saying, "Hey, I see where you're going, but this didn't quite make it to the page." That's why beta readers in general are great, because any person, if you end up publishing the book and your book is read by millions of readers, which is what we all hope, every reader is going to have their own read, their own take, their own questions that they're asking. And the more eyes that you have, there is the too many cooks issue. So you don't want 100 eyes, even if you anticipate a million readers, but you do want people with different perspectives to read your book because they're going to catch things that just you can't see the forest for the trees or whatever the expression is when you're very much in the detail and when you're carrying that whole 350-page book in your head. So it's incredible when you do find that person whose feedback is enhancing what you're already writing, who says kind of like in a relationship, who says, I see you. Here's the way you can be an even better version of yourself. When you're looking at someone's book, you want someone who can say, can see your book. I can see your vision. I love what you're doing here. Have you considered X, Y, and Z? And so finding that partner is phenomenal, and you can really create something incredible when you're getting that feedback in your own project. And then when you can take that communication style and collaborate on a project together. So if you've found that person, you can talk after you've read each other's work, you've exchanged ideas, and you can say, hey, this is really working. Then you can feel good about moving forward intentionally.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. So brainstorming, such a fun part of the process, but you want to kind of, everybody ideates differently. However, this was so fun, like, and you can jump in here, Lauren. So when we decided to work on this audiobook first project, we kind of had this idea for this crazy cross genre project with 4 different points of view. And we realized that in order for this to work, we were going to need to have a huge brainstorming session. And to me, like, this is probably the most fun part of the process, I think, because like Lauren said, I mean, if you're just in your head or you're writing things down, and Lauren and I will speak to this, both of us are not huge detailed outliners. So to have to kind of think about everything up front is such a wonderful skill. And we'll talk about this in a moment, but you 1000% have to map out your book or your project if you are collaborating with someone. You can't just kind of fly by the seat of your pants. But what was so wonderful about our brainstorm is we actually ended up, the 4 of us went to a cabin and got away because we're all so busy. And we were like, you know what? We need to just be sequestered in this cabin where we're actually setting the book that we're writing and brainstorm. And we were able to hear each other. I remember, Lauren, you were like euphoric, we were just like tossing ideas back and forth. And it was so organic and lovely. And every single person did have a voice. They were heard. And even if it wasn't the exact right thing or that idea got vetoed, it was a kind of like a safe space for everyone to just say what they thought. Maybe you can't do a getaway, but, hopping on a call with someone or a Zoom, setting a timer, and then just go nuts with the idea, like let anything and everything come out. And then, we actually had one of the writers was writing down the notes and like kind of keeping everything, logging everything for us while we were all kind of chatting. So that was a really beautiful process. But if it's just 2 of you, you can really chit chat about that. Lauren and I also, for our project, we went to a co-working space and we were like, let's just brainstorm. Let's talk about this. Let's see if we can map this out. And just doing that freely without immediately saying no or immediately cutting someone off or vetoing an idea is just a really wonderful way to establish trust with your writing partner too.
Yeah, one thing that was amazing about that experience is the kind of ideas that the 4 of us were coming up together, where one idea was building on another idea, was building on another idea that would have never happened if I was sitting down in isolation brainstorming, because really you're taking other people's ideas and improving on them and adding to them and thinking about them from different angles and from your own experience. And so Maria's exactly right. I felt absolutely euphoric. All of these ideas are just kind of flowing through us, and that's incredible. And again, something that when earlier in the chat, someone said that their editor was I, me, and I, or something like that. And you just don't have that experience when it's just you brainstorming by yourself. So yes, the brainstorming is really important, and marking that time out is almost a gift you give yourself and the project for its future as you're moving forward. So brainstorming, like Rhea said, the most fun part of the project, but then you need to do the real work. And I say that as someone who does not like to outline. I am,
I don't
you know,
either.
neither one of us like to outline. I think we're both plantsers, if you all know those terms. The plotter writes an outline. The pantser writes by the seat of their pants, meaning no outline, doesn't know where they're going. I think Rhea and I both exist a little bit in the middle of that space where maybe we have an idea, but certainly don't have a detailed outline. But if you're writing with someone else, you don't have that luxury because they don't live in your head. You need to know where the story is going. You collectively need to have a shared agreement of where the story is going and what the main beats are of that story. So first you need to create a book skeleton, and that's just what we're calling this loose outline. So we don't, for the two of us, again, I think because we really just dislike outlines, we're not writing a beat by beat, scene by scene, what's going to happen. To me, that's when you write your chapter is when you do that. But we do write about, a couple sentences of the main things that we want to happen in each chapter. And that doesn't mean we're tied to it. It can shift. And as we are writing and moving through it, we do shift if we say, hey, actually, we need a connecting chapter between these two ideas. But in general, it's so that we are each in agreement of the main plot points, because Rhea and I write thrillers too. That's really important to know who did it, for example. And for me, writing on my own, and I think Rhea's had this experience too, I have started books and not known who the villain was, and then written myself into a corner and then had to delete, 20,000 words to get out of it, which is always painful. That would be incredibly painful in a collaboration. So, in order to avoid that, we are getting down our ideas first, where we think the story is going, of course, who did it, or what the mystery is, or what the key plot points are before we start actually writing the chapters. We're also focusing on the details. What do you think about, what do you need to know before everyone writing sits down to write? So what are the major plot beats? What do we think big level, big picture is going to happen? Who are the characters? What do they look like? If you're all going to be describing characters in your chapters, you need to be in agreement on what they look like, what they sound like, what their personalities are. These are things that you can brainstorm ahead of time that will make the whole process go smoother. It's really helpful too if you write a synopsis. So what, 3 paragraphs, 4 paragraphs, 5 paragraphs, whatever that looks like, of the book's major themes, the book's major plot points. So you have it all on one page that you both agree these are the key points of this book. And then from there, once you have that skeleton, once you've agreed on the key details, and once you've written the synopsis, so you know what the book looks like holistically, you assign chapters and sections, and we'll talk about that in more detail.
Absolutely. Love having a little process. So this is not our book by any means, but this looks very, very similar to our Google Doc that we have of what we're working on. We don't really have much description beyond this. So, with the book we're working on, we do have a synopsis, and then we have our chapters and we assign each other the chapters. We have, 2 points of view in the book that we're working on together. And we just sum it up in a sentence or two. And it is so helpful. Like, let's say a week goes by and for some reason, and we didn't write a chapter, it's just really helpful to go back through and be able to kind of like see what happened the few chapters before, what is going to happen. A lot of times I'll just cut and paste this, like the little description, and drop it in my chapter, read the chapter before so I can kind of drop into mine. And it's so incredible when you have this, like, you will have 100 pages in a blink of an eye. Like, I cannot believe how quickly we've gotten to like 30,000 words or 20,000 words, 30,000 words. It's night and day from doing it on your own. So that's the other exciting thing, is just when you can get organized and have your outline. I mean, you're off to the races, and it's just been really, really incredible to see.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, knowing someone is waiting on your
It's
chapter is a really big
it matters.
motivation to read it. Yeah, it's like, okay. And, because you already know, I mean, for me, it's been really incredible because sometimes when I'm working my own book, I sit down in the morning, I don't know where I'm going. And
Exactly.
that is actually part of what takes me so long is just thinking, okay, this is where I left the last chapter. Where am I going in the next chapter? And because I'm not working with an outline, I have no idea. And I'm letting the characters guide me, which is definitely, it works. And I have written books that way, but it does take me a lot longer versus thinking of some of this up front and knowing, okay, Ria's written her chapter about X. Now it's my turn to write my chapter about Y. Let's go. And I already know what Z is, right? So I already know what the next chapter and the chapters after that are, which makes it so much easier to write the chapter that I'm working on. And again,
And
speed
I'm
process.
Yeah, and I want to do this with I mean, again, I roughly outline my books, but for some reason, when I'm left to my own devices, I always get stuck on my own between like 20,000 words and 40,000 words. And sometimes if I'm not on deadline, I'll just walk away from it for like months. And with this, I mean, sure, you could take 6 months to write a book. But I mean, this is just for some reason, especially with the project we're doing with four writers, it's so condensed that I'm like, we're going to be done in like a month because it's just such a back to back to back process. And like Lauren said, we know where we're going. So I mean, all the outliners right now are probably rolling their eyes because they're like, yeah, of course you know where you're going because you have an outline, but it's not a 40-page outline. It's not a, super laborious long thing that I feel like I get trapped in. I think this just very like high level book skeleton is so helpful and it really, really works.
And it's also that it's not just that I know that you're waiting, right? That your writing partner is waiting on your chapter, but I also know someone's going to be reading mine. So
Mhm.
that it also it gives me, I think sometimes I put little things in for Ria thinking that she'll think they're funny or they're whatever. And that also makes me write a more not perfect chapter because they're
They're
still
pretty perfect. They're pretty perfect.
yeah, it makes me write. I think I write better knowing I'm going to have an immediate reader than knowing that just I myself, once I've written my way through them and going back to read it. There's something too about that that's very motivating because I'm already thinking of an audience in mind, which of course I should be doing because I plan to publish everything I write, even my solo projects. But I know I'm going to do multiple drafts, and it takes away, I think, again, some of that pressure where I'm just like, all right, let's go, which is phenomenal. So you've got your outline. We also talked about you want to get those details right. And one of those is who are your characters, especially the way that we work both with the co-written project between the two of us and the four-way project. We're each writing from a different character's point of view. So that's how we've decided to alternate chapters. So we alternate between points of view, and then we are each always writing from our own our character's point of view. So in the book with four people, there's four characters. Each one of the authors has taken a character's point of voice. We alternate between them. And Ria and I's book, there are four characters, and we have each taken two that we're writing from. Is that right?
Yeah, well, but also this is the tricky part of collaboration too, is in each of our chapters, we're writing the other characters' voices as well. We're writing their dialogue, we're writing their description. So you have to know when you're collaborating what they look like, what their mannerisms are, what their sense of humor is like. And I mean, that's been so interesting to have to kind of try on someone else's character. And the cool thing about the feedback is like, if Lauren is like, I've written a line of dialogue, she can easily just make suggested edits and be like, nope, my character wouldn't say that. She would say this. And it's just like instantaneous feedback, but you're kind of learning a new language along the way because you are having to write these other characters.
Yeah, absolutely. So having a guide like this is helpful. So we know their personality, we know what they look like, we know why, a little bit about their backstory. And then, of course, those things develop along the way, and we'll even make notes to each other we're adding this, to the backstory. We're adding this detail, mark it for later. They wear glasses, right? Or go back. I think they should wear glasses. Go back and make sure they're wearing glasses, the whole thing, whatever that is. But just making the more of that work that you can do ahead of time, of course, the easier it is to write pages. But that doesn't mean that you might not change or add things along the way. Then you just like anytime you edit your project, you're going to go back and make sure that between both of your chapters, both of your point of views, that they're consistent.
Definitely. And I think we started on the four-way project and we were like, wait, what does everybody look like? Like we had kind of mapped out our characters, but I was like, oh wait, I don't really know what this character looks like. Or, so we did spend some time doing that too. Okay, so great, you're collaborating and it's going great. But when you are collaborating, it isn't just about your voice. And I think a lot of people, I know that was one of my concerns is like, ooh, am I gonna get lost? Is my voice still gonna be mine? So if you are worried about that, and maybe you're not, but I think it is very important to kind of name some of your non-negotiables, if you have any at all, before you start drafting. So if you feel like there is something essential to the way that you write, like your style or themes or something that you're not willing to shift for the collaboration, then your partner needs to know that up front. So as Lauren was saying, a lot of collaborations, you are writing alternative perspectives or chapters, and just making sure that each writer does kind of quote unquote own that character's voice. But realistically, I mean, if you are collaborating, there has to be some flexibility there. So if you were like, nope, not willing to budge on this, and this, then, collaboration might not be the best thing for you. But I think going in very honestly and being honest with yourself ahead of time can save a lot of headaches down the line. But the most important thing is, and we said it earlier, but you don't have to sound like one writer. I guess unless you're writing one point of view, you do have to sound like one writer. But I love this idea of creating a third voice, something that neither of you could have done on your own, but it's something that really honors both styles or even more than two writers. And I feel like we're really doing that with our project that has four people. You can definitely see the distinct voice, but they all kind of work harmoniously together. So it's really cool to see how you can create something new.
Yeah, and one thing that we did compromise on, I think especially you and I, so since Rhea and I come from a thriller suspense writing background, and we're working on this multi-genre project with two other authors. One is more romance and one is magical realism. The romance writer writes suspense too, but for the magical realist writer, she didn't want to do anything too dark or scary because she's also going to put her name on this audio first project. And for her and for her audience who recognizes her name and associates her writing with these really beautiful magical realist tales that are not murdering people like Rhea and I do. She wanted to make sure, right? She wanted to make sure that even though we are writing this multi-genre mystery, that it doesn't get too dark, that it doesn't get too scary. And so it's been interesting. And for us, we thought, okay, we can do that. That's great. There's still suspense. There's still mystery. And actually, she's been writing. It's interesting.
She
We
did.
her to write some suspenseful
I was
chapters.
like, "Ooh, you." I was like, "Look at these suspense chops. You didn't even know you had
That
them."
are brilliant. They're as beautifully written as everything else that she writes, but she is kind of tiptoeing into suspense. But meanwhile, I think, and we're not pulling back in a negative way, but we're thinking of ways to almost make, I think, what we would normally write accessible to a wider audience. So not everyone likes to read thrillers, things that, start with a murder and then have to be solved. So still writing suspense, but writing it in a way that's accessible has been a nice challenge. And it was something we were all willing to compromise, but we also talked about it early. So she said that when we were at that cabin brainstorming, I don't want this to get too scary. My readers won't like that. And that's great. It was great to know that at the beginning because that shaped everything else that we did from that skeleton outline to the chapters that we're writing now. So, getting into the nitty-gritty of the logistics, we use for all of our projects, we use Google Docs. That's just our preferred platform, primarily because you can see what people are doing in real time. And so since we're exchanging chapters back and forth and we're doing it at quite a quick pace, thanks primarily to Ria, it is nice to put write a chapter, have it there for whenever it fits into your schedule. Since we all try to touch these projects every day, we're not always working. I like to work in the morning. Other people are, fitting in that time in the afternoon, but it's already there. It already exists, and edits can be made in real time, which is incredibly helpful, especially in the four-way project, because we have four different people who are writing, but also who are reading and commenting. So having this doc that auto saves, so there's no fear of it losing your work. And it also is saving it in a way that we can access, previous files, previous versions of it, so that if someone accidentally deletes a section, it's still there. No one has to panic. And that we can co-edit at the same time. So even this afternoon, someone had uploaded a chapter and we were making comments because that's possible. You can edit where you're just editing, your words are going directly into the text, or you can suggest. So there's a suggesting option. And if you turn that on, it's like track changes in Word, where everything that you're doing is showing up, and a suggestion where the original author can go through and accept. And then we also comment and say, like, hey, have you thought about this? Again, love where you're going here, see where you're going here, but something maybe isn't clear. Can you clarify? Or maybe if I've written Ria's character, Ria can say, I don't think she would say that. What if she said this, right? And being able to have that dialogue ongoing in the comments or in the manuscript itself in real time is I so phenomenal, so helpful. We can all see to each other. Again, with four people, we can see each other's comments and we can add to each other's comments. And it's like that brainstorming that we did at the cabin. It's just all happening in a Google Doc, and in my mind, not as fun. But again, that's because I'm an extrovert and want to be, surrounded by people.
The only extrovert in our group. It's so funny.
Want to be together, but we're all able to share that in real time and in a way that is honestly more realistic, because were we to try to meet up in person every time we did this, we just none of our schedules, especially between four people, align that way. So it's incredibly helpful to use Google Docs.
And I wanted to comment on that too. So like, though we have an outline, we have taken a couple of meetings. We have an outline Google Doc as well. And we kind of map out the next four chapters to make sure that we're like on the same page if we want to change anything. So that's another way you can do it if you're like, ugh, doing a whole big outline just sounds like too much work right now. You can do that as well. So that's really nice. Like we've kind of divided it into little bite-sized chunks, and that feels really doable. And because we're getting four chapters done so quickly, then we can review the next four. So again, and there's so many, I know people write in Scrivener and Word, but I've had Word crash on me so many freaking times. I do all of my client work in Google Docs. It is a savior. Okay, so the fun stuff, setting a schedule and clear expectations. Just like an outline is non-negotiable, a writing schedule, in my opinion, has to happen. Now, this depends on what publishing path that you want to take. So for our collaborative project with the four of us, we knew that we wanted to traditionally publish this. We wanted to try to we all four have agents, which is also tricky, but we wanted to get an audiobook deal from a publisher. So we set a schedule to actually create the pitch. So we did not write the whole book. We created a very in-depth synopsis, character sketch, author bios, and then we did 4 sample chapters, and that is how we sold it. So we had to have a schedule for that in terms of like, okay, that's kind of why we went to the cabin. We mapped all of that out. We got everything done so that we could then submit. For, our other project that Lauren and I are working on, we're actually still kind of deciding, the path that we're wanting to take, but we decided to just write the whole book. We just want to write the whole book. So we've kind of worked backwards. If you want to self-publish your book, really figure out with your partner, when do I want this book to come out? Do I want it to come out the end of 2026, top of 2027? And then you can, once you have that date, just kind of work backwards and figure out how long you think it's going to take. I did not realize that we would get chapters done so fast. Like I thought this would maybe be a 4, 5, 6 month project, but we have really moved so quickly. But sit down with your partner ahead of time, look at your calendars. Even if you have to write in your chapters that are due, put it in your calendar like an actual appointment and keep it. I think that's great. But be realistic with yourself. How many hours can you devote? Are there specific days or times that are completely off limits? For me, I try not to work on Fridays. I don't love working on the weekends. I have a ton of client work, so I kind of have to be a little bit strategic about when I can write. And then, yeah, if something crazy comes up, like we had, this isn't crazy, but one of the writers got really, really sick and was kind of down for the count. So, we knew that her chapter wasn't necessarily going to come right then, which is fine. So just being very transparent and really looking at both of your schedules and seeing, what you can do.
Yeah, yeah, and it being in alignment is so important, and having those early conversations is important too. And it can feel awkward because now you're taking hopefully what is a friendship and a writing partnership. But if you're serious about publishing, it's a business, and you have to have those more business conversations about scheduling, about deadlines, about expectations, about ownership, right? What happens and an exit plan, right? So if worst case scenario, one person can't continue with the project, what happens to the project? Because we know people who have worked on a project together, someone left it, and then it just died because they didn't have an exit plan that was clear, that they had agreed on, that they had signed. Because at some point, if you do want to sell it, everything has to be signed, everything has to be legal. And if you're not in agreement, that can get you into a lot of awkward conversations, but also potentially legal trouble. So to make sure that you are both in agreement verbally, but also have something written that states what happens if one of you needs to walk away. Does the other person have the right to continue it? Then how much of that project do they own? Having those conversations may feel uncomfortable and awkward, but they're so important so that you set yourself up for future success.
Completely. So yeah, you can do that. I mean, to be honest, like we definitely have the paperwork for the four of us. Lauren and I'm going to be totally transparent. We didn't write down this little collaboration agreement before we started, but here's kind of a little sample. This is like so minimal. I mean, you could get, if you have an entertainment lawyer, or you could get someone to draft it up, but it's really important to kind of think through what you want to do, especially if you are not represented by an agent. If you are represented by an agent and you sell your book, like this is all going to be taken care of in the publishing contract. But I think it's also really important to have a collaboration agreement between you, so everyone is clear and then it doesn't get murky. I know everyone enters, just like marriage, everyone enters into it thinking this will never end, it's going to be great. But this is a product. This is a business. It is a business relationship. So really thinking through what is important to you. And like Lauren said, what happens if someone, can't complete their obligations? What then?
Yeah. Yeah. So all important things to at least talk about if you're not, and like Rhea said, we did not do that, I think, because we are so in alignment, but it is helpful. And there are things that can come up that are unexpected. It might not be that you part on bad terms or one person loses interest. It could be that someone gets sick. There's all kinds of things that happen in life, and just making sure that you've thought about that before you enter this long-term relationship with each other and with this project that you're working on together is important. So, what is a sample weekly rhythm? We told you what we do, which is still mind-boggling to me that it works, but it does, and that we already started, we met, we mapped out that skeleton, so we know all of our chapters, where we're going. We have already assigned who's working on what, and for Rhea and I, we're just alternating back and forth. And the four-person project, we primarily alternate, but since there's four points of view, sometimes we vary it a little bit based on whose point of view might best serve the chapter. So that's something that you can think about too. But we assign it at the beginning, either all of it at once and with the flexibility to change, or in batches, like Rhea said. So you could take four chunks of chapters, assign, write them, reevaluate, assign four more, write them, reevaluate based on, who it makes the most sense to write it, or even whose schedule maybe makes the most sense. Especially the four of us, people have book tour, they have different events that they're doing, different launches that are coming up. So being mindful of those things too, as you're assigning chapters, is really important. You write, whoever turn it is, they write their chapter, they upload it, and then you edit together. So if it's Rhea and I, then I'm editing her chapter, I'm leaving her comments, she's addressing those comments. We might go back and forth asking questions, and then we resolve everything. If it's the four of us, the same thing. Now you just have, three people with three different opinions. Or a lot of times what we're writing, it's also having a little celebration, instant feedback, like a comedian having people laugh at your jokes, which is something I get really excited about if someone writes "ha" in the comments next to something funny that I thought I wrote or I thought was funny. So you also get that feedback too. A lot of what we're writing is love, right? Like this is a great part. And that's for any, and a lot of you who have written at home by yourself, it's amazing, right? To get the feedback of what's working, but also it's incredibly valuable to get what's not working, what you can improve, what can be enhanced. So we work on that together. We upload chapters. We all give feedback. That original author edits based on that feedback. And then we move on, and the next person writes their chapter, and then the process begins all over again. And we just repeat it back and forth until we're finished with the whole book.
And I want to speak to feedback, because my favorite part of collaboration, besides just the nature of having other eyeballs and insight and momentum, it's so fun, is you receive, or at least I do receive feedback so differently. Like if someone's like, nope, don't like this or cross this out, I don't even think twice about it. It's just so, I don't know, like I don't have any sort of feelings about it. I'm not like taking anything personally. It is all in service of the story. And sometimes if you get feedback from like your editor on a book that you've slaved away on all by yourself, they're like, oh, they just don't get it. But this is very different. It's allowed this like removal process almost, that we all just, no one takes anything personally. We're so open to suggestions. If you want to push back on something, you push back on something, but there's such a level of respect and a foundation there that it's made me take feedback and actually reframe how I give feedback for my clients in a different way. And I think that's just been such a beautiful part of the process.
Well, another advantage of the way that we're giving feedback, so you mentioned getting your editorial letter. When do you get that letter? After you've written the whole book, so
Yeah.
often, depending on how your schedule works and how deadlines work and how your editor works, at least for me, I write the whole book. Then I get agent feedback. We go back and forth. Then we send it to my editor, and I get an 8 to 15
Yeah.
page
Yep.
letter of all the things that could be improved. And I
Yep.
have to take about a week to remind myself everything's in the service of the book. He wants the best for the book, that, all that mental work before I can go back into the manuscript. But part of it is when getting 8 to 10 pages of feedback of things you have to fix is makes your head hurt and is just a lot to comprehend at once. But two, it's because you're getting it after you've submitted it, where you feel like it's finished and you've made it as great as it possibly can be. And then you're learning that you have to break it all apart, which is of course a part of the process when you have an editor. But what we're doing for each other is we're giving each other feedback in real time. And it feels so much more manageable because it's bite-sized chunks. It's just feedback on that one chapter versus feedback on 40 chapters. It feels
Absolutely.
so much more manageable, and it's just such a better way to move through it and to be correcting things in real time versus writing, especially a thriller or something that's twisty in one direction and then finding out you wrote maybe in the wrong direction.
I did a symposium actually called How to Approach Edits Without Losing Your Shit, because the editorial letter, every time I just get paralyzed, and I only do like 3-page letters for my clients and have them focus on macro edits, like 3 major things. And because I do get so overwhelmed, but like you said, the bite-sized real-time feedback is, in my opinion, for a first draft, absolutely the way to go. And then we can really like polish and refine it. A lot of times, Lauren and I are like, ooh, my chapter's in, it's really bare bones, it's a little thin, but we'll go back and we'll like fluff everything up, on the second version. And you're not paralyzed by perfection and agonizing over every sentence for weeks at a time. You don't have time to when you have other people relying on you. So it's just I don't know, it's a beautiful process. I'm learning so many things that I love about it and that I can use as a solo writer, actually. Okay, so dividing tasks strategically, we've talked a little bit about this, but I mean, what about if one of you, let's say one of you is really, really great at world building or scene setting or plot or pacing or dialogue or humor, and the other person is, really great at X, Y, and Z. For the project that we're doing with the 4 of us, we all have very specific strengths. I think I remember reading the magical realism author, her name's Jennifer Mormon, her chapter, I was like, good Lord, writing chops. Like it made me want to like up my game. I'm like, oh, my my chapter's too lean. It's too this, it's too that. But it's hard not to get into comparison, I think, but just really thinking about what you do bring to the table and what your partner brings to the table and what they enjoy. If there's someone like, ooh, I want to write humor, or I love like upping the stakes, having that conversation, I think is really important before you begin, so that you're each kind of filling those buckets and you feel recognized for your talents. But it's also really fun to try out other things that you think you might not be great at, and flexing those muscles too. I feel like we've all done that in our collaboration projects a little bit, and it's been really fun to try on something new.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because even when Rhea says something is bare bones, then I read it, I go, no, it's not. It's great. It's incredible.
You do the same too. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're like, oh, this is a terrible chapter. I'm like, that chapter was amazing. Like it's
we're
just
all our worst
yeah.
critics for sure. And even with the 4 of us, like Jennifer says, or like Rhea says, Jennifer has this really lush prose that is beautiful. Rhea is skilled in writing suspenseful plot. And so you combine the two and you're getting both in one story. And both are serving the character voice. So in the same way that Rhea is really skilled at writing plot, her character is the type of character who's going to think about all the beats and what that suspicious guy is doing, and is going to be at a quicker pace in the way that she speaks, right? In the way that the dialogue is moving in the text. And then for the other character who's a little bit more dreamy and is going to stop and literally perhaps smell the roses or pay attention to those details, it works with both chapters because that helps us have 2 very distinct narrative voices and points of view in the chapter. And then what we hope eventually when this meets the public is that we can have readers that appreciate both, appreciating the novel as a whole. And as we know, even though we're reading cross genre, very few readers only read in one genre. Most readers, and we ourselves, read in in all different genres. Just because I write thrillers and enjoy thrillers doesn't mean I only read thrillers. And so we're hoping that we have that cross audience between us. We'll get into that too, and how we hope that this will help promote to, we'll be able to promote to our different audiences. But before we get there, how do you navigate creative disagreements? Like Ria said, this really hasn't come up too much or really at all for us because I think we realize that any note that we're giving, especially when we're giving feedback, is in the service of the story itself. And knowing that we all feel that way really helps us or to receive feedback. So when I write something and Ria says it's not working, she's not saying it in a way of how dare you write this chapter, that sucks, right? Or how dare you not think of this point, what's wrong with you? That's not how the feedback is. It's, have you thought about this? Or I don't understand this. Can you clarify? Or this voice doesn't sound how I imagined, or this relationship, I want to really believe in this relationship and there's something not working. Can we deepen that relationship? Can we give a part of the backstory that helps us understand why that character is the way that she is? And that might be something that I just haven't thought of because for me, and as we all know, when we're writing, those characters exist fully formed in our head, and sometimes we're not getting it down on the page. So having open communication, having dialogue, but also giving each other the benefit of the doubt and knowing that everything is in service of the story and the project, and that you both want the project to be the best version it can be, that kind of helps us so we're not even in that realm of having disagreements. They're conversations. They're conversations, not disagreements.
Completely. Watch us get into a disagreement after this. Like, because we don't have it. It's fine.
We'll just have to look at each other and say we're having conversation, not an
That's
argument.
right. That's right. And I mean, I don't want to say this slide's ridiculous because everybody's different, but I think disagreements will come up or different points of view, especially I've been shocked with having four writers, four different voices, four different egos, and like everybody's just so great and supportive. But let's say something major came up. It's in service of the story. You have to really look at what the argument is coming up for. And we have had not disagreements, but like really making sure, because our story that we're working on with the four of us is a little bit meta, not a little, it's a lot. And really making sure that all of us agree and understand like what is actually happening. And that's what's so interesting is when we're writing, like Lauren said, I'm in my head. So I'm like, oh, I'm so clear on what's going on. But you have to be hyper communicative throughout the process because you can't just be internal and you can't just go off and think about your characters and what's going to happen and then rush to write it down without running it by your collaborative partners. So if it is story specific, like arguing for the story, each of you having time to make a case for what serves the narrative, because that is a very common thing of just like thinking the plot might need to go one way or the next. And then a really cool way to do it is if you really think like, no, I really feel like this character needs to go this way or this needs to happen, and your partner doesn't, write both versions and compare them side by side. I think it's one of the easiest ways to see kind of what works and what doesn't. And then you get to decide together on like what stays or goes. And there can be a million different kind of disagreements, but I think really creating a space where you can both work through that conflict is really important. And if it is story specific, try it both ways or four ways or however many collaborative partners that you have and see, what works.
Okay, so you perhaps have a disagreement. You both have two different ideas of what should happen, what shouldn't happen. When do you compromise and when do you say, I can't? This is really important to me. So as you're thinking in service of the story and as you're having conversations, if it's a minor plot detail, a word choice, one person feels really, as long as it's not offensive, right? But one person feels really strongly about one adjective versus another, character names, setting specific. These are these are craft decisions. These are conversations. These are things that maybe one person just feels more strongly about than the other, or maybe you both feel equally strongly, but these are things that you can come to a compromise. Maybe it's not A or B that you both feel strongly about. Maybe you find a C and it's neither one of your favorite, but you can't choose between the two. So you come up with a third option and that works. You agree, you move forward. But there may be things that you say, look, I can't compromise on this. So, for example, for Jennifer writing the magical realism, not wanting the story to be too scary, too gross, too disturbing because she's concerned about her readers. She has her own name, she has her own brand, and she is not willing to compromise or have a reader who really loves her tales of magical realism come to our story and then find something gory that they would have never picked up, but they did because it had her name on it and then they feel betrayed. That's a big deal. And that's something that she shouldn't have to compromise on. And we were all okay saying, you know what, we're glad you told us and we can absolutely honor that. So there are different things that you may feel strongly about that your writing partner may feel strongly about that are worth saying this is a non-starter for me. Just make sure you have those conversations early.
Completely. Okay. Well, we've talked about this a little bit already, but giving and receiving constructive feedback. Or I jumped the gun and talked about this, but again, this is all about serving the story. It's not them critiquing you. It's just about the shared work. So something important to remember, because like it's hard for me. I am a developmental editor, and so I'm like in people's stories all day long. But you're not, when you're editing your partner's work, you're not fixing anything. It's really again in service of the story and having kind of that bigger mindset going into it, and not just, I'm not the editor of this whole story. It's our shared story, and everybody's opinion matters. So that's really important to kind of make room. But maybe you haven't given feedback before. Maybe you're not an editor, and that's totally okay. So, it can be a little like, eek, am I, how do I give feedback? So, good rule of thumb, leading with what works, telling someone what you love, what they did well, like, oh my God, this is such a beautiful, sentence. I love what you did here with the character. Focusing on effect, not preference. So I've been guilty of this in the past, like, nope, not working, don't like this. Just softening it a little bit and really stating clearly for the writer, because they are not you and they're not in your head, like, this scene slows the pacing, or I'm not really clear on the character's motivation here. Just making it clear to the writer so they know what they're changing, and then offering options, not demands. So as Lauren was saying before, suggesting 2 or 3 possible solutions rather than just being very, very laser focused on a singular fix. And especially if you're critiquing someone else's work, at the end of the day, it's their chapter. So they kind of get the final say so for their character. I mean, if those are the ground rules that you've set, I think that's very clear and you can give your suggestions. But at the end of the day, if someone's writing a different character, you should trust them enough to, make those changes.
Yeah, and one thing I want to add about giving feedback is if you don't like something, if you have that knee-jerk reaction of, I don't like this, and we all have this as people who consume literature, TV, films, we might walk away and from a movie, a TV series that we felt very betrayed by the ending. Won't say which ones those are, but in this thing, I didn't like it. I mean, I just really had this knee-jerk reaction. I didn't like it. That's fine. And I think in this, especially in a social media culture where we're so used to liking things, of course, it's natural to have that response, but we need to step back as readers and as writers and say, why? Why didn't I like it? Because ultimately, what we're asking is what wasn't working. And that's something we can learn from ourselves as writers if we read something, think we didn't like it, and are able to articulate what wasn't working in the text. But as we're giving feedback, that's something that we need to be able to do for our partners. So if you don't like something, to take a step back and say why, and then instead of just saying, I don't like it, say what wasn't working, right? So I don't like the way these characters were talking to each other. Well, why? Well, because I thought they liked each other and this feels a little snarky, right? So that it doesn't actually, what's not working is it doesn't feel in line with their character. And being able to articulate that is so much more helpful for the person receiving that feedback because that's something they can work with. If you just say, and I think we've all gotten notes like this in our editorial letter, this big thing isn't working. It's well, what's not working, and how do I even fix that if you haven't been specific, right? So being able to take a step back, that's so helpful for the person receiving feedback, but it's a good practice for you because you can apply that to your own writing. So again, when you're on that receiving end of the feedback, listen. So sometimes, like we talked about, this hasn't happened as much in our collaborative processes, but when getting our editorial letters, taking a beat to, especially if you're the type of person who gets defensive for whatever reason, because I mean, not for whatever reason, for a good reason, you've shared a part of your writing, which is something you've spent time on. It can feel vulnerable, but taking a moment before responding and processing what you've been told, thinking about, are there reasons? Is that feedback coming from a person who also wants the best for the manuscript? That's something I, again, remind myself whenever I get my editorial note. This is someone who also wants the book to be successful. That's the place that this feedback is coming from. So that means I'm assuming good intent, right? They want the story to succeed as much as I do. They just might have a different opinion or another idea on how best to go about it. So taking the time, sitting with it, this is good practice anyways, as we all know. If we receive an email that rubs us the wrong way, just take a beat before we send that response. The same thing applies as we're receiving this feedback, just to take a beat, process it, separate ego from craft. So it might be that our initial reaction is to think, well, I wrote this, they're critiquing me, but they're not. They're talking about something that's going on in the text that's not working, or they have a question about, or it's not clear. Hopefully they're articulating it in that why way versus a I just don't like it way. But even still, if someone has that reaction, if they're not able to articulate it, then it's your job to say, okay, something's not working here. What is it, right? If maybe they articulate something and you think that's not it, or they have a suggestion on how to feed it or to fix it, and you think that wouldn't work, but something is not reading right to them. Let me take the space, let me take the moment to try to figure out what that is and fix it.
Completely. Love it. Okay, one of my favorite things to talk about, and actually, it is one of the main reasons. So we also started a group here before we decided to collaborate on a project called Nashville Authors. And the reason we did that is because as an author, as a solo author, launching is just very for introverts, not extroverts like Lauren, but for introverted people, it can be like very paralyzing and overwhelming to be like, oh my God, I have to put this book out on my own. Everybody's going to be looking at me, and when you collaborate, it is not all on your shoulders. And so we kind of created this group just to support each other through our launches and supporting other authors. But when you have two or more authors, I mean, that's two audiences, two networks, twice the promotional kind of power, which I think is so incredible. And again, it was one of the biggest reasons I wanted to collab, because I've been very forthright about this in my career. I love writing. I love the creative process. I love the editorial process. I don't love launching books. I feel like it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of energy without necessarily a return on that investment. And sometimes it can feel a little lonely. Like, I love doing in conversations, but when you have a partner and when you've created something, you get to create a launch together and figure out how you want to push a book before, during, and after launch. So I think it completely transforms how you approach marketing. If you are someone who doesn't love marketing, this is wonderful. Because what about, and that's a strategy, partnering with an author who loves marketing, who loves launching or has a really big social media following or loves compliments you and maybe fills in some of those gaps where you don't necessarily shine as much. But again, as we talked about, looking at your combined audiences. Like when we do our audiobook, that's another reason I wanted to do audiobooks. When you launch an audiobook, guess what? There's no book tour. I'm not going to bookstores doing launch events. It's we're mostly sharing in the digital sphere, which is really amazing. But we get to blast it across all of our social media followings, our email lists, our readers. Again, we're doing cross genre, which is really cool. And then if you are doing events, having both of you show up, like how I always say, or used to say, like, I first discovered Christina Lauren, who write these like kind of romance books. And I had them on a podcast that I used to have back in the day. And as I talk to them, I'm like, oh my gosh, it sounds like they're having the most fun all the time, like doing a book tour together and getting to just be lockstep every single part of the process and every step of the process just sounds so fun to me. And now, like Lauren and I get to do that, and the four of us get to do that, and we've already actually been reached out to and done some speaking gigs together. So that's been really fun too. But just that collaborative spirit is wonderful. And then media angles too. Like sometimes the power of co-writing that can really become a hook for interviews, podcasts, feature articles. The power of two. It's just one of my favorite pieces of this collaboration.
Yeah, and it's pretty incredible because Ria, as we've talked about our different personalities, and is an introvert. I'm an extrovert, so I
Well,
don't.
I'm mixed. I'm like yeah, like
You can do
extrovert.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just don't necessarily get energy from it. Where I get energy from being around people. But for me at book tour, my fear is not getting up in front of people and speaking. I
Oh,
have
it's
that.
nobody showing up.
Yes, that's the
Yeah,
fear.
that's my
It's,
fear. I love
it's
speaking.
yeah, it's that you're like a kid before your birthday party and you're worried none of your friends will show up. I still have that fear in my stomach
Same.
before any event that it'll just be me and the booksellers, which is lovely. We can all have a really amazing conversation, but you of course want readers there. And so if you have your audience and Ria's audience, and then if we have the other people's audience and we're drawing them in, that's just there's double or quadruple the likelihood that people will fill those seats and we won't be alone. And even if we are alone, at least we're up there alone together, right? Which also feels better. And another kind of just into the details and the nitty-gritty thing, social media allows you to really amplify the more people who are involved with something. So right now we use primarily Instagram because I think we're a little bit more comfortable than TikTok, although we'll probably start getting on there too. But Instagram with its algorithm, if you post something and then you ask other accounts, so other people. So for us, we have a Nashville authors account, and then we have our 4 individual authors account. If we ask other accounts to collaborate, which means it cross post, I'm sure most of you know this, but just in case some of you don't, when you invite something, when you make a post, you invite another account to collaborate. You can invite, I think, up to 10. This means that that's going onto their accounts and it's going to all of their followers too. So you can imagine how it goes from one, for example, the Nashville authors to 4 more. So now it's going across to 5 accounts and it's hitting people. It might be hitting some of the same people more than once, but that's great because from a marketing perspective, you need several times to make an impression, or it's just reaching a bigger audience, which means more people are hearing about our project, more people are hearing about our events, and we're able to promote to a wider audience, which in today's digital era is so important when it comes to sales and then the success of whatever your project is. So just to reiterate kind of what Ria said, we can do those book signings together. We've done panel discussions together. this is an example of how a workshop hopefully feels more dynamic because you're hearing two voices instead of just one. So it's a way to really enhance whatever you're talking about. We can, cross promote. And we also are trying to be better about this, but we film behind the scenes content together, which I think none of us are of the generation where we feel super comfortable on screen doing social media, doing silly videos. But if it's four of us being silly on screen doing a video together, it feels just less cringy. More, I think we're more likely to do it. And luckily, the Melissa Collings, who's the romance writer of the group, who's also moving into the thriller space, she's phenomenal about creating these silly videos, and she just gets us to all do it together and post it, and they're fun, and it feels more fun to do it together.
Absolutely. So we only have a few more slides, so be thinking about your questions, dropping them in that Q&A box. We would love, love, love to answer them. So just kind of to wrap it all up and really thinking about like how to determine if co-writing is really right for you. So kind of the little framework, little visual here is again, finding your partner. That is probably the most important step. And again, really thinking about all the different ways that you might be able to go about that. Then you would step into the brainstorming session and just see like what ideas even come up. I mean, when Lauren and I, like when we came up with the separate project we're working on, I don't even remember. I think we just like that just came up one day and we fleshed it out, and now we have 30,000 words in less than 2 months, and it's just crazy what those brainstorm sessions can do. Setting your clear expectations, signing a collaborative agreement if you want to do that up front, dividing your tasks, setting your deadline, navigating the disagreements, and then we didn't go too into the publication paths and like what that looks like if you're collaborating. But once you do decide on how you want to get the book out in the world, the last step is obviously promoting together and figuring that out.
Yeah, so we've gone through kind of the key steps. If you're like, great, I'm interested, I want to move forward, here are some signs that it might be right to you. You have this idea, you enjoy talking about the story as much as you do actually sitting down and writing it, because all of us who are writers, we know that when you tell someone you're a writer, they say, well, I have this idea. And your response is, great, you go write it, because the writing takes the time. The ideating is so fun, and we all have ideas and we all want to write books. But to actually sit down and write it is where the real work begins and where the real time commitment begins. And if you're collaborating, where you need to be in alignment. So if you are that person who not only has an idea, but is willing to sit down and do the work and invest the time and even have the time, right? You're energized by other people's ideas. You like brainstorming. You're willing to relinquish a little bit of control in service of a story, in service of an idea, going from your own to something perhaps even bigger. You want accountability built into your process. So you're okay with having someone like Ria, who's just, they're back there waiting. They're going to write really fast, and they're going to be, while you're writing, there's someone who's going to be waiting on that chapter. And that is a little bit of pressure, but you're like, let's go. I welcome it. I want that accountability. You're willing to compromise in service of the bigger story. You can let go a little bit of your ego in order to work together to create something brilliant and beautiful. And you're maybe someone who's been working on a solo project and dreaming about what this would look like. You're stuck in your solo project. You want to switch gears, or you've just finished a solo project and you think, wouldn't it be fun to try something new? If all of those things, if those are checking all the boxes, then you might thrive in a co-writing agreement, a co-writing partnership. Proceed with caution and be honest with yourself if you do struggle to accept feedback, if you're not quite ready. I think for me, it took a while. I was a little bit primed for constructive feedback because my background is in academia and I would write research papers that were always being vetted. So I had to develop a thick skin. But if you're new and you still think, I don't know, that actually makes me feel a little sick inside that someone's going to be critiquing my early draft, then you might not just be ready, or you might not be in a place yet, or it might just be that you're the type of person who is always going to write books on your own, and that's also okay. That's what most people do. If you require total solitude to write, this may not be the right thing for you because you're going to have to engage with that other person and brainstorm and get on the same page, literally and figuratively with them. If you have difficulty meeting deadlines or that pressure is just too much, this might also be something you need to press pause in because you owe it to your partner and to yourself in service of the project to be meeting those deadlines. And it might just be, again, that whatever stage you are at life right now, you don't have an hour to give every day to a project. You don't have an hour to give every week to a project. That's okay. You might in the future, right? If you want complete control, co-writing might not be for you. That is probably the biggest one because you are going to have to relinquish some control of the big picture idea, but also the smaller things along the way. And you're going to have to be willing to compromise in the service of the story. Also, if you tend to avoid difficult conversations and you're not willing to advocate for yourself, you're not willing to advocate for the story, this might also be a hard process for you because at some point, difficult conversations will arise, whether it's we need to rethink the plot structure, we maybe our schedules aren't aligning. How do we fix it? You might have different ideas about how to promote it. There's so many things that you're going to have to talk through. And again, they can be conversations and not arguments, which is how Rhea and I like to think about it. But you do have to be willing to have that open conversation. And if you're not, then either that's something that you might want to think about and work on, or it might just be this isn't right for you. And that's okay. Neither one of these columns is a judgment. Self-awareness is key and is something to be valued. It's just knowing where you are at before you begin and before you bring someone else into your work process.
Absolutely. Okay, so next steps. So what do you do if you wanna find that partner? So to reiterate, finding your writing community. Can't stress this enough. You never, ever, ever know when someone you meet could become a co-writing partner down the line. Um, Identifying one person. So think of a writer in your life, someone whose work you admire. And you know what's funny is I've actually, because I thought about collaborating years ago, and I made a list of like, ooh, what writers like would I love to collaborate with? And then one of my friends who I wanted, a writer friend who I wanted to collaborate with, she had engaged with three other writers and they went on to do this huge audiobook that was very successful. And I felt like I was too shy to ask. I was too like nervous to ask about a collaboration, and I kind of missed out on something like that. So really thinking about who you admire and just asking. Like so much of being a writer, I think is being willing, being a career writer or being a professional writer is being willing to ask those uncomfortable questions about what you want and getting information. So many writers don't ask questions and we kind of shy away. So that's really important. And then dreaming big and aiming big. Why not? Starting a conversation with them. Don't have to, yeah, pitch yourself at all, but just, yeah, ask what they're working on. Talk about the craft, see where it goes. And then if you do find someone that you want to engage with, we said this earlier, but try something really, really tiny, a short story, a scene, find some cool prompt, a brainstorming session just to kind of see how you mesh. It's all one big experiment. But if you do the due diligence ahead of time, I think you can save yourself some headaches, headaches along the way.
So Thank you, everyone. We're excited to hear your questions, and I've been enjoying just this the first time I've done something with Symposium. So seeing all the everyone's comments pop up in the discussion thread has been amazing. We, as you can tell, we are so excited about our own partnership. We really believe that this collaboration experience has been absolutely phenomenal, that it has made us better writers, that we're doing fun, new, and different things than we would have ever done alone. And so we're excited to be able to share that with you, to share the process with you, and then of course to answer any questions you might have.
That
Absolutely.
was fantastic.
Yay.
It
Oh
was
my God,
great.
it's so dark. It's so dark now. I'm like, I put on my
Oh,
orange
I know.
lenses.
It's
Yeah.
crazy. It's crazy. And I have the Q&A box up over my face, so I can't see myself, which I prefer.
How did you manage all the chats? I can never look at that while I'm like have a presentation up.
Oh,
Well,
because yeah. Lauren. Yeah, I don't know how she does it because I can't do it either. When I'm presenting. Like anyway, but I've had multiple writing partners in the screenwriting space. So one of the reasons I was excited about you guys talking about this was because in the author space, it's very different medium. I mean, screenwriting is much more common to have writing
Mhm.
partners, but in the author space, I mean, the voice is so much more evident on the page in prose and how you make that consistency. I mean, we have some questions, but I also have some questions. Like when you're doing your second draft, is that when you try to have a consistent voice throughout? And do you do like what the Coen brothers do in screenwriting, where they give each other a scene, like the one will write a scene, they'll give it to the other, and the other one will try to elevate it. So they're both in the same scene, like writing at different times. And then they try to like push it farther and farther until they both say, okay, now we've got it because we went as far as we could go in this scene, you know? Like, do
feel
you
like
ever write each other's stuff or
I
no?
feel like we're kind of doing not writing necessarily, but because we're also hands-on in the editorial process, like we're
Mm-hmm.
actually tweaking and changing and making suggestions, especially with the dialogue, like because our characters do appear in everybody else's chapter. So everybody has their hands on it and the voice I don't know, like already I feel like we've kind of refined the voices of all the characters already, but I think that second
Mm-hmm.
pass will be like we'll really get into kind of the nitty-gritty.
And it
Yeah.
helps too that we're writing from different points of view. So each of us is taking a character and writing from that point of view. So we don't necessarily have to have consistency across the chapters with each other. It's actually good that the voices sound different because they're written from the point of views of different characters. So that's been really
Yeah.
helpful in terms of the
Yeah.
writing.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And like also too, when I'm listening to the advice that you guys are giving, scheduling time, making a schedule, figuring out what your deadline wants to be, creating your own deadlines. These are all things you can do without collaborating and all things people should do,
Sure, they
right?
should.
As I wrote myself a note, schedule time.
But it's so true. And I think we kind of alluded to that. I've learned all these different tips and tricks that I want to apply to my own books, my own solo projects going forward. And I don't think I'll ever write another book without truly at least getting that like book skeleton down. But it's funny, it's going to be weird, like just going back to that solo project because I've so enjoyed this one. And actually, Lauren and I have another collab project out on submission right now. So we essentially have three that we're
We
that
were
we're
going to
working
talk
on.
about that.
It's totally crazy. So, but these are all just great tools. It just forces you to be a little bit more organized. And why not apply that to your own writing? It makes everything so much easier.
But
Has
you're
there
right,
been
the accountability really helps. The
Yes.
accountability, it's hard to hold yourself accountable, but when you know there's another person, that just, it really does, it forces us to be more intentional and to do the things we want to do for our own projects. We have to do it when we're working with someone else.
Yeah. This
Completely.
question that somebody put in the chat is, I think, my favorite question we've probably ever been asked. At the risk of getting ahead of the flow here, is there a message board or exchange anywhere, something available to help you find a suitable partner, like a Tinder for writers,
Oh my God, that would be
right?
phenomenal. That's a great idea,
Someone
actually.
develop that app.
Somebody should
Ex-
start that ASAP. That's a great idea.
exactly.
You could like,
Just
toggle it by genre and, how many,
hmm
like indie path, traditional path. Like, I love that. That's
I
a
know. I thought that was so great. I don't think there is, to answer your question, I don't think there is. I know that a lot of people, I'm very active on social. I used to be much more active on social, and I run a screenwriting chat on Sunday nights on X. And sometimes people have found each other there. There's a lot of writing Facebook groups. I'm on a Discord group with a bunch of writers. I mean, like, so some people might end up, clicking in that capacity, but I love that that Ria and Lauren met in person
yeah.
first. I think that's so, so important. Um, I have had three different screenwriting partners. Um, one of them I went to college with, one of them I met online, and one of them was the author of the book I was adapting. And so three extremely different experiences. And also too, when you're listening to the way you guys set it up and how you guys scheduled it. Like I had one writing partner where we would I did a lot of the writing, and then she would come in and do some more like, like give me notes. And then when she would write a scene, I would then give her notes. And, we went back and forth like that. Then I had another writing partner where I did all the writing, and then they gave notes more like a producer would. And then another writing partnership where we had one that was outlined and one that we did like by the seat of our pants. And the fun story I was telling Ria before we started was like we would each do 5 pages, and then I created this was the seat of the pants one. I created a character named Calvin, and it was a horror script, and I was really excited because I was like, oh, I had all these ideas of what I was going to do with Calvin. And then I gave it to him, and he did his 5 pages, and when it came back to me, he had killed Calvin. And I'm like, wait a minute. But we just
Yeah, that's
we just went with
crazy.
it, you know. But I I love that you guys met in person, and also too that you're as a group went someplace to just kind of focus. I mean, what a treat. Do you
Yeah.
do that for yourself when you just write by yourself? Do you ever like go away and hide?
I don't. I tend to, I mean, I love the idea of it, but it just isn't all, it doesn't always feel practical. And I can do
Mm-hmm.
that. I can just lock myself away and just write without having, I can just set that boundary without people bothering me. I think if you are not in that situation, that might be helpful to get away. I love the idea of it, but it also makes me feel a little anxious because I do want to be around people. And so
Mm-hmm.
going to a cabin with four people is great to brainstorm. If I were to just do it by myself, I think I'd lose my mind and end up at a coffee shop anyways to work.
Yeah, I love solitude when I'm writing, honestly. Like I was in my tiny home studio all afternoon because we had cleaners here and people putting in trees, and I was like, I just want to be in my studio. And so I do crave that. Like I really need I actually when I am writing, I like solo time for sure.
I'm imagining you guys as thriller writers. Like if you went away to a cabin all by yourselves, you probably would scare the crap out of yourselves just by what
That
you
was
were
what
writing.
was so fun because our book is very like thriller-esque, and I mean it takes place in the cabin that we stayed in. So it was so fun to just actually play like our characters, and we took a lot of like video and footage that we're going to use for the promotion of the book and stuff. So we were kind of thinking ahead actually before we ever even had, a book deal.
And it's
Yeah.
so interesting because we are writing these different point of views. Sometimes in the manuscript, I will use the author's name instead of the character's name when I'm talking about what they're doing because they've become so tied together in my mind, the characters that we're writing, that I want to say, well, Jennifer, oh, I mean, and then I have to say her character and what she's doing.
And if you guys have more questions, please put them in the Q&A box. So were the agency and your lit agents, were there hurdles to overcome with the collaboration? Like what was there like was especially with the four of you, whose idea was it to start this collaboration? Was it your agents? Was it the four of you who then approached your agents and your agent said, what the hell are you thinking? Like, how did that, how did that work?
Well, it was
Yeah.
Ria's idea to collaborate. I mean,
Of
it started
course.
because of the promotion. Yeah, of course. If you know Ria, you know she has the big ideas, and she is doing so many different things, but she's really passionate about supporting new writers, but also her fellow writers. And we met thinking actually from the promotion perspective of how can we support each other through launches since we're all local to Nashville. How can we show up for each other? And at that same, we met for breakfast at a local restaurant here in town. And at that same meeting, she said, what if we all wrote a book together? And it went from there.
But we, I think we even went to the cabin and actually created the pitch first before we ever approached our agents. But we
Oh,
knew like, oh God, four agents. But because we were pitching it for audiobook first, Lauren, who is with CAA, she has an audio agent, whereas the others of us didn't. And so her agent took the charge, took the lead in getting everything together. But we did have an agent who wanted a collaboration agreement in place before we ever pitched the book. And that actually did delay us pitching for several months. Like we were ready to go. We were so excited. And then the realities of like waiting on legal and, all of that did kind of slow us down a little bit. But we haven't announced our book deal yet because it's not, we're still waiting on the final pieces. But yeah, it's having four different agents. Other than that, though, it's been really easy. Everybody's been
mhm.
very collaborative. Now, the publishing side of things, it'll get a little bit more red line
Mm.
and more input for sure. But yeah, that's something to think about. I mean, when you have separate agents and everybody's going to want something different for their clients. Like it is a lot to think about if you're going the traditional route.
Or if one of you is agented and the other isn't,
Totally. Yeah.
all of
And then
that,
that agent can sometimes that agent will just rep that
that book.
author for that specific container, which, isn't too big of a deal. But
Yeah. Okay, so will you leave us a prompt or a clue for finding the great collaborative audiobook when it's a reality?
yeah, well, I mean, we just found out we're going to have to change our name because Harlan
I know.
Coben is coming out with a book by the same name. We're so bummed. But
Learning this yesterday.
it should,
Well, it
yeah,
also shows that you were very good at titles.
I guess. Well, it's kind of the perfect title for this book, but
Yeah.
it's supposed to come out February or March next year. And we will be sharing it to death. So yes, we will be sharing all the fun clues leading up to that.
And just the whole collaborative concept, like even if there's people sitting here who maybe land on that list of wanting control and all that kind of stuff, you have to collaborate with your editor, you have to collaborate with
Yes.
your
Collaboration.
and in screenwriting you're collaborating with your producer, you're collaborating with everyone. It takes like a beyond a village to make a movie. It takes a whole city. It's of people. So it's always good. I always say to people, just don't suck, you know. And I mean that like as a writer, but also as a person. Like just be the kind of person other people want to work with.
Well,
Right.
and the coolest thing about that is not only are we working with people we want to work with, but I mean, and we didn't say this simply, but you're splitting the work. I mean, it's so amazing that you're splitting the work. And it's just like, I can't believe how quickly four chapters goes. I'm like, it's already my turn to write my chapter for the collaborative one with the four of us. And I'm like, wait, I just wrote a chapter a week ago. But it's this it just has this momentum that the solo projects don't, but it's not all on your shoulders. The self-editing is not all on your shoulders. It's just, I don't know, I freaking love it.
And the
I do too.
procrastination is not all on your shoulders.
Is
Well, right.
very true. And it's not just the writing work that you're sharing, it's the brain storming work. That's your all that brain power that when you're just sitting alone on yourself and you're going on walks trying to figure out things, you can just call someone and do that brainstorming. And unlike at least with books, when you're waiting until the end of the project to get that feedback from your editor, your agent, everyone else who's going to touch at the mark, you're getting it at the very beginning. And that just is such a huge, I think in the long run will also be a huge time saver because we've been
Mm.
getting that constant feedback from the beginning and we're not going to write in the wrong direction because we have the two of us looking at it or the four of us looking at it.
It doesn't
And
mean we're not going to get edits. Like we'll get an
No.
editorial letter, but to have four brains or two brains to
yeah,
dissect that, like, oh my gosh, what a dream. So much better.
yeah, totally. And the I think one of my favorite, I actually had another, I guess you would call that person a writing partner, but they were just my brainstorming partner. They
Yeah.
wanted nothing to do with writing. They didn't want
Hmm.
any credit or anything like that. It was just somebody I would call up and say, "Ah, I'm really struggling with this. How do I, it's like, I'm trying to figure out, and I didn't really even need their input. I just needed to talk out loud to think, right? Do you walk around your little cave in your backyard and you're just talking to
No,
yourself?
I don't actually. It's weird. I think on the page. I know that sounds weird, but like that's and I actually process when I go on walks and that is when so yeah, I guess I do kind of talk to myself, but I have to be walking and just moving,
Moving.
thinking about it. But that's what's so cool about having a collaborative partner because you can do that, you can just bounce those ideas off of someone and get that immediate feedback.
So, like Lauren, when you're writing by yourself, like, what does your brainstorming process look like normally if you're not in a collaborative situation?
I ate a lot of snacks. I'm serious. If I'm stuck, there's something about, I'm sitting there
Yeah.
writing. And it really what is you're taking a break, you're letting your brain take a rest. But if I get up and I meander into the kitchen and I eat a handful of trail mix or whatever, somewhere between that standing up, getting a snack, normally by the time I've put it in my mouth, I have an idea and then I want to race back. But it's really just that I've given myself that break from staring at the
Mm,
page and trying to
Yeah.
force it. And I've given my brain time to process that can figure out and then go back to the page. If it's something really tricky, I might go on a walk and think through it. But now Ree and I exchanged our solo projects. So we also were able to say, hey, and in fact, I had gotten notes from my agent on a new book that we gone back and forth. And I felt like she was telling me something and I just wasn't getting it. Like whatever, however she was wording what wasn't working in my manuscript, I was not understanding. And so I gave the manuscript to Ria and my agent's notes. And I said, hey, will you read this with these notes in mind and to see if there's places that I can address it, see if you understand, if you can rephrase it in a way that I can understand and address it. And she did. And it's really phenomenal that I got, of course, my agent's notes, and then I got Ria's take on it, and then was able to kind of get unstuck on a certain, plot aspect and fix it because I had that feedback. And then we pulled in another author who has also worked with Ria, and we all exchanged pages from our own individual projects and gave each other. And I'm still, I mean, and the other amazing thing is, so for Ria's book that I read, that's just her solo project, I am so invested in it. I'm invested in the story. I'm invested in the characters. I'm invested in its success. When it comes out, I will be singing its praises.
Well, I mean, I've been
When
on
it comes
submission
out.
when it comes out. I've been on submission since February 3rd. It was with 17 editors, and it has been crickets. Like it is just the strangest time. It's so quiet right now. And I'm so excited about this book. I've never loved like a book more. And I'm like, what is happening? It's just been very strange. That waiting space is brutal to just sit back and wait.
But here's the thing, when you've had other people who've read it, and you've had other authors who've read your work, people you've respected, and they say, I know you're not hearing anything, but that's not because it sucks. It's really incredible. We've read it, we know it, we know there's a space for it. Just having that support system too
Totally. No, it
is
helps for sure.
so helpful. And and she will absolutely place it because, we'll all be talking about it too. So
There's no way.
There's a friend of mine who years ago, I think I was telling you about this before, Ria. Um, she got together with I think there were a total of seven of them, seven authors, and
Okay. Yeah.
they each wrote a book for a series based on the same character, and but it was every one was a different genre and different story. But so they each wrote an individual book by themselves, but it had this thread of being the same character in different circumstances. And because they had the power of seven, and they self-published them all.
This is
And
why I started Nashville Authors. After we had this chat, I was like, I want to do that. I want to start that. And I reached out to these ladies. Like, literally, it is because of you. Actually, it literally is because of you.
Oh
The
my
Nashville
gosh.
Authors happened, and that the four of us collaborated, which then led to Lauren and I collaborating. So this is all thanks to you. It was that conversation. It
Wow.
was.
and
Well,
it wasn't, and that whole thing, I mean, I thought the whole idea was genius. It was like,
So
why
smart.
don't more people do this? And then they had the seven people promoting the book, so they were like USA Today bestsellers in like 2 minutes. Like,
Yep.
the people, you could buy the whole set of them. I thought it was such a cool idea. I don't think they ever did it
Brilliant.
again, but I thought it was a really good idea. Um, okay, so I gotta ask, I know we're almost done here, but the rewrite process when you guys, before you hand it over to your agents, before you're getting notes from your agents, will you tackle that rewrite process, do you think? With the two of you, I'm not so worried about it, because I feel like the two of you, it's just less complicated with less people. But like, I've never heard of any four authors writing the same book, so I think this is really fascinating. So you took that idea from my friend and like put it on steroids. So,
Yeah.
which is, oh, of course you did. So, but will you look at it all just kind of like, okay, like ask each other, like, okay, what's your normal rewrite process? Do you normally look at structure first? Do you normally look at like character development first? Like, what is your normal thing, and how do you think we should tackle this?
God, that's a great question because yeah, we obviously haven't gotten editorial notes back, for the big project, but I'm hoping it will be, because it's audio first, that it will be slightly less dense and overwhelming versus a typical editorial letter. But yeah, I think we'll have to have a collaborative meeting and decide, I mean, maybe it's like, oh, fix, the pacing, the character, we need to tweak this. But I think actually putting our heads together and coming up with an organized plan I think it's actually going to be easier, not harder,
Yeah.
personally.
I think so too. And I think, for me, it's starting with plot first, because if something's not working plot wise, that can have such a domino effect on everything else. So tackling the plot first and then moving to smaller details. That way we're not making big changes that then end up having to be changed later. But I imagine too, we'll be looking at it together and then breaking it apart and tackling those issues in our different separate chapters after we're in agreement on where to move forward.
Yeah. So, one other thing I just want to say, somebody dropped a note. I don't know how to pronounce this. Um, Gava Gavajay, I have no idea. Gavagai is a social media for writers. I know it's not a question, but I thought it should share. And so whatever that is, I've never heard of it. I thought I had heard of every social media platform out there, but yeah, there's too many social media platforms, in my
Yes,
opinion.
yes, there are. I wish they
It's
would all go away.
Yes, it's like, it's crazy. So I want to, first of all, thank you. This is amazing. This is fantastic. I think
Ew.
people who have been wondering, should I not, whatever, they're gonna really be able to get a better idea of whether they're mentally the kind of person who's wired to collaborate or not. And then great tips, which I'm actually going to use just for myself. So
Yay. Hey, see, works.
totally. So I want to also tell you guys that Ria already mentioned a couple of the symposiums that she's taught for us before. Um, the book skeleton one and editing one, but I'll put links to all of those in the recording email so you can access those, because she's one of our most popular instructors. She's so good. And then we've got another one with Lauren coming up But before Lauren, we have one for all you thriller writers. If there's thriller writers out there, we actually have a former CIA spy teaching a session on April 15th about surveillance, what it is and how to write it. So that would actually, he's a mystery thriller, writer. And his stuff is really informative. It talks to about specifically like how to write authentically, which is great. And then on April 22nd, Lauren has one that I am super excited about because I am a geek. It's deconstructing books for craft and marketability. Read like a writer. So like, like you're reading books, and a lot of times we're reading books for fun and everyone says you have to read, read, read. But when you're reading books, you need to really analyze them. Just like when you go to film school, you analyze films, like, why this happens, what makes this work. Like, it's the same thing with a book. Like, why not pick apart books that you're reading and make you a better writer? Because these one did something right. They got published. So I'm really jazzed about this one. I'm going to be taking a lot of notes.
I'm excited.
And then,
turning
yeah.
everything you read into a craft lesson, like a free MFA.
Yep, love it. And then on April 29th, we have building a powerful query letter. And then in June, and I've got some more in May, but I don't have those live yet, but the anatomy of representation, everything you need to know. And that's in the screenwriting space with Lee Jessup. So that's what we've got coming up. Really excited about all that. And also to remember that Ria has a book coming out when is yours coming out?
April 28th. Dear Mother.
Dear Mother, coming out April 28th. And maybe that can be the first one that you analyze after you've taken Lauren's class.
Ooh, maybe.
And then Lauren's new book, Indie Darling, is coming out in July. And both of them do like developmental editing, and Ria's a book coach. They're two amazing minds, fabulous women who, whenever I finally finish my book, I'm calling.
Finish it. Come on. We've been talking about it.
I need a schedule.
You need a schedule. You need a deadline.
Yeah. I need a deadline. But thank you so much. This was so great. And I really, really appreciate you guys doing this and giving us a chance to do a presentation like this for free for our audience, because it's really valuable. So thank you.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
It's been fun.
Yeah.